and let us all do we can to build a better future. Leaving Afghanistan? Are we leaving Afghanistan? I know you covered some stories about it. We've talked about it here at Hard Lens Media. A lot of independent media networks have talked about it. But as it turns out, as the Taliban is once again retaking large territories and cities in Afghanistan, it's quite clear now that the Biden administration is doing everything it can to maybe bring in additional troops.
Hey, by the way, I just want to give a shout out. Vietnam is calling out. They want their history book back.
Yeah. And so we've been in Afghanistan now for 21 years, and it's been happening under both Democratic and Republican administrations. And it should tell everyone that even the members in the United States Senate and House, both Democrat and Republicans, they've allowed this war to continue on. And what's the point of us being there now? Like, the main reason we were there in the first place was to get Osama bin Laden, and that guy's gone. He's gone. He's
wasn't
dead.
Even there.
He was next door in Pakistan.
It was the equivalent of like when the police are like swatting a house and they flashbang a baby, like, oops, our bad.
Yeah.
But we're going to stay. So
with that being said, let's actually look at who's actually calling out the BS of the military-industrial complex. Let's pull this tweet up from Jimmy Dore, and we'll play this video too, but first I want to read his tweet. War is bipartisan. Oh, that's true. Hold on. War is bipartisan. Hold on. I'm going to read that again for the people in back, for the vote blue no matter who and the MAGA red supporters. War is bipartisan. What do you know? They both agree. $25 billion extra for war this year. Biden is actually ramping up bombings in Afghanistan, expanding bombing in Africa to Somalia, some of the poorest people on earth, and is occupying 1/3 of Syria. Proud to bring my anti-war message to one half of the country. Here's Tucker Carlson. Let's actually play this video in its full entirety, where Jimmy Dore is on Tucker Carlson, and he's actually going to, at least on this platform, Jimmy Dore is speaking truth to power. Let's play this video.
Kit, shouldn't we do nothing but yell at Tucker Carlson and not trying to change anyone watching opinion and make them not like us? I mean, it makes no sense to try and convince them on policy.
Here's the thing. It doesn't hurt to have dialogue and to talk about how much this war is wasting our treasury. And the thing is, if people are so upset about Tucker Carlson, well, then why are they so upset with Rachel Maddow or Chris Cuomo for not having Jimmy Dore on their shows? I mean, look, if the big mainstream media outlets really want to control the narrative, let's be very clear. Invite Jimmy Dore on your show. Do it. Go ahead. Do it. If you're so afraid of Jimmy Dore, what's the problem having him on your show? But at least he's on Tucker Carlson's show. Let's hear what he has to say. Let's play this video.
Over the past 20 years, the U.S. government has spent trillions of dollars in Afghanistan, not to mention a lot of lives. We were told that all of that would result in a good government in Afghanistan and a military that could defend it. Joe Biden was saying that as recently as last month.
Is the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan now inevitable?
No, it is not. Because you have the Afghan troops at 300,000, well equipped as any army in the world, and an air force, against something like 75,000 Taliban. It is not inevitable.
So everything's going to be fine because the Afghan military, which we trained, that's Mark Milley's department, was going to defend the country from the Taliban. Right. That turned out not to be true. The second we announced a pullout, things fell apart. The capital could fall to the Taliban in just a matter of days. Today, the Pentagon announced it's sending 3,000 troops back to Kabul to start evacuating the U.S. embassy there, helicopters on the roof kind of thing. The Biden administration is now begging the Taliban to allow that retreat. So why didn't we know this was going to happen? And the people who train the Afghan military, where are they tonight? Jimmy Dore is the host of the Jimmy Dore Show. He joins us. Thank you, Jimmy Dore, for coming on tonight. You got to wonder, 20 years of training the Afghan military by the Pentagon, what did they do with all that time and all that money?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I mean, just imagine if we weren't in Afghanistan for the last 20 years, the Middle East might be unstable. So, I mean, you remember Trump tried to pull Trump tried to pull us out. By the way, this war is bipartisan, right? As all wars are. They're very bipartisan right now. The military-industrial complex has a stranglehold on both parties. So Trump was trying to pull us out of this war because it turns out you can't just invade other people's countries, set up a Starbucks and a McDonald's and think they're going to be just like us. They're not just like us. We've had fathers and sons, and pretty soon we're going to have grandsons fighting in Afghanistan. So it's a nice way for Americans to make multi-generational memories, I guess. But what happened when Trump tried to pull out, if you remember, Congressman Crowley and Cheney, Liz Cheney got together, bipartisan, and they put a stop. And they said Trump wouldn't be able to pull out unless he met these certain criteria, which we'll never meet. So they made sure the president, the commander-in-chief, could not pull us out of Afghanistan. But now here is Joe Biden, who claims he's going to pull us out of Afghanistan. Now, why is he? First of all, as soon as he announced it, he started ramping up the bombing. I don't know if you know that. He bombed Shahid Anwar Khan High School and a health clinic that killed 20 people, a lot of them women and children. So he's ramping up the bombings as he's saying we're pulling out. And I don't know what that is, if that's dementia or what, but that's the guy who's ordering the strikes. That's happening right now. So let's just remember that they increased the military budget. So why is Joe Biden being allowed to pull out of Afghanistan? Well, because he's agreed to start bombing in Somalia. I don't know if you know that's happening. Joe Biden is now bombing the poorest people in Africa. Half the country are like 40% of the country are nomads. And Joe Biden is now bombing Somalia. So and now he's occupying a third of Syria right now. So this never gets talked about, right? This never talks about. So he's just switching his imperialism. And I really appreciate you giving me a chance to come on and talk about this, because they'll never stand up against imperialism at CNN or MSNBC or anywhere else. So I just want to say thanks for that. And what we need right now is a real anti-war movement to rise up in America to stop these wars. They gave Joe Biden an extra $25 billion to do war. I thought we're getting out of Afghanistan. Why does it need an extra $25 billion? And let's remember how much $25 billion is. $20 billion, they say, could end homelessness. So we just don't have the political will. Every pothole those $25 billion worth of bombs make in another country is a pothole that's not getting fixed in America. We can bomb everywhere in America, but we can't feed our own people. I live in a democratically controlled state that's got a Democratic governor, and we've got people living under every bridge in California.
All right. So, Daniel, you want to shoot first?
Wow, that was it's just like, just to reiterate the weirdness of the world that we live in, where first of all, the only anti-war person on cable news is that guy, and then he's the only person that'll bring on progressives. Again, like NBC, they'll never bring on Jimmy Dore. CNN, they'll never bring on Jimmy Dore. Fox News, Tucker will bring on Jimmy Dore. So I just always think that is one of the funniest and saddest parts that exposes the failure of mainstream media, just right there. That's like, this is like a situation that is the only way that something like that can happen. That's a weird thing. Let's just acknowledge how weird it is that is a setup that's happening, that progressives are forced to go on Fox News. And then on top of that, he's right. It's like, oh, don't worry, we're not slowing down the amount of bombs we're dropping. We're just shifting the location in which we do it. Hey, don't worry, we're not going to be in Afghanistan because we're going to be over here. It's whenever Jimmy Dore is on Tucker, it always just reminds me how just absurd this situation is around us, that he's a recurring guest there, that it just gets to me how, like, we're just like, killing people for resources to keep a dying empire alive for as long as we can, and everyone acts like it's a reasonable, normal thing. And I guess maybe at some degree people are realizing otherwise, but most Americans are focused so domestically, and most politicians are focused so foreign. It's a system that these results are kind of inevitable, but it's it's really disgusting that they are. And it's so weird that he makes a fair point that Trump is blocked from withdrawing troops.
Yep.
And Biden is withdrawing troops and using increased violence to do so. It's just weird.
You know, there's a lot to unpack. Can we actually pull up Jimmy Dore's tweet? We don't have to play the video again because I know we have a second video, and I'm sorry to put you guys through this, but I want to just pull this tweet up again one more time. War is bipartisan. $25 billion extra for war this year. Now I want to stop right there. Let's actually focus on that. $25 billion extra for war this year. Who voted for that? Our wonderful people in the United States Senate and House. The wonderful people in the United States Senate and House. That includes Democratic and Republican lawmakers. Now, the thing is, Jimmy Dore was on Tucker Carlson's show, but so has, again, Dr. Cornel West, Tulsi Gabbard, Bernie Sanders, I think was also, more or less on his show. Or he's it on the Fox News platform.
It's like, yeah.
But, but here's the thing we have to remember, is that, okay, I remember when Jimmy was here in Chicago where he was on Ben Jarofsky's show, and Ben was saying, well, I want you to yell at Tucker Carlson and be more mean about Trump. What's the point? Trump wanted to get us out of Afghanistan, and now it looks like we're going to still remain in Afghanistan. What's the point of yelling at Tucker Carlson when you can have the whole world hear just how much BS this war in Afghanistan truly is? It's now 21 years. Fathers and sons, and God forbid, if that's the case, grandchildren now, multi-generational memories. Hey, my grandfather toured this route, so did my father, and his father, and his fathers, and his father, and his father. I mean, is that okay? Democrat and Republican voters? I'm going to ask the voting people, independent voters, is this okay with us? Is this acceptable? So what's the point of me yelling at Jimmy Dore, telling him, oh, you got to do this and this and this? For me, I want to say good for Jimmy Dore going on Tucker Carlson's show, and good on Tucker Carlson for having Jimmy Dore on his show, because I think it's very important that the American people, whether they're a Republican voter, Democratic voter, or independent, no matter what generation they are part of, they understand that our lawmakers are wasting our treasury, our money, on a fruitless war. Now, I have to apologize to all of you in advance because I want to let you guys just see another side to this. We're going to go to Morning Joe, Daniel. That's right. Shout out to Case Study QB. Be sure to follow him on Twitter because Twitter is censoring him for some BS reason. And be sure to check out his YouTube and Honesty channel. But here, let's hear another perspective. This isn't Fox News. This is Morning Joe. And let's see if you could hear the subtle differences between what we saw with Jimmy Dore being on Tucker Carlson and Morning Joe talking to one of the former members who actually was in charge of military operations in Afghanistan. Let's play this video.
Now, the American people, Admiral, support this move, and yet I'm still surprised at our rapid removal. Ned Price at the State Department said this wasn't abandonment, this wasn't evacuation. It's exactly what it is. And I just wonder, Admiral, how the United States of America maintains security, not just for everybody else's interest, but for our own selfish self-interest, if we can't even keep 2,500, 3,000, 4,000 troops in a country like Afghanistan, in a country like Syria. We've now figured out over 20 years, and everybody's going to be talking about what have we learned over the past 20 years. Well, we figured out how to have a really small footprint in places like Syria and Afghanistan, and at the same time, stop the Russians, stop the Syrians, stop the Iranians, stop ISIS, stop the Turks, stop everybody from advancing. What do you think about a country? What do you think about politicians that aren't willing to actually put 3,000, 3,500, 4,000 troops in hotspots when most of those troops want to be there and are upset when they're withdrawn?
The way to think about this, Joe, is leverage. In other words, what can you gain with relatively small footprint, relatively low cost in a very strategic place? I mean, look at a map. Afghanistan is parked in the middle of Russia, China, Pakistan, India. It's sitting on top of $1 trillion in rare earths and lithium.
There it is,
which
the
goes
money
in every car battery ever made. There's a lot of reason to want to keep stability in Afghanistan. By the way, starting with the fact that when it's ungoverned, it becomes a launch pad for things like 9/11. Doing it with 150,000 troops, when I commanded that mission, it had 150,000 troops. That's not cost effective. But doing it with 3,500 to 5,000 troops makes a lot of sense to me. So I agree with your premise. We are failing in keeping the leverage here. At this point, there's really no way back that I can see for the administration.
I'm going to say this. I'm not saying that we do this. I'm not trying to be controversial in any way, but I'm just saying, based on like warmongers like that, there's only one real way that we could succeed in Afghanistan. You know what that is?
What is it?
Genocide. Kill every single man, woman, and child in the country and then import Americans. That's the only way you could do this. It's probably something they've considered. But just listening to that, America's military is not a mercenary group that's there to make money for the country or other companies within the country doing things. That is a disgusting viewpoint. That is reprehensible on 10 different levels. It's anti-American. It's anti-human. It is just, let's just enforce military rule wherever we go. All the things that we talk about espousing, freedom, apple pie, those cliche things, we do not want anyone else to have. In fact, it would be disgusting if they did. And we like Saudi Arabia. This is the mindset of one Morning Joe. I'd like to see how he reacts to a squad of soldiers entering his home at night.
You know, people hearing again the big difference. Now, look, I know there's a lot of things. Tucker Carlson, his viewpoints, whatever, it is what it is. But the thing is, comparing that to then with Morning Joe. Morning Joe wants us to still stay in the war. Morning Joe will never have Jimmy Dore.
How
on
much
his show.
can we utilize
Joe,
off of 3,000 soldiers in an area?
Exactly. So the thing is, Morning Joe will never do what Tucker Carlson did. Morning Joe won't have Jimmy Dore on that on his show. Mm-hmm. Tucker Carlson will. Tucker Carlson will have anyone that is, has integrity, and more importantly, that speaks truth to power.
Tucker likes people that annoy the other left side and get some views.
Right. And so my question then to people like MSNBC, CNN, and cul-de-sac progressives that carry water for the DNC, that vote for this military-industrial budget, why don't you go over there? Why don't you go fight? If it's so important, oh no, we got to stop Russia, we got to stop Syria, we got to stop Iran. I wanted to give a newsflash to everyone. The U.S. military budget is the biggest in the world. Even if you combine some of the larger countries in the world, some of the more successfully financially stable countries, including Russia and China, we still beat them combined. Our military budget is being wasted on regime change wars, and it sucks.
You know what's also interesting on that front? So this is kind of a thing that I've been kind of doing my own dabblings in the background. So there's this thing, I forget there's this term for it, I don't remember right, but it's basically obsolescence, is that the things that won a war will never win the next big war. In fact, they'll be the things that lose the next big war. So, for example, when World War I started, you know what lost? Cavalry. Napoleonic-style tactics. Old ways of thinking about warfare. You know what was really helpful in that war? Tanks, planes, but biplanes. The very basics. What did that do? That then matured, and in the next war that came, boom, World War II happens. What is left behind? What were the really big things that also happened in World War I? Dreadnoughts, battleships, basically irrelevant for the most part in World War II. What were the big winners of World War II? Well, aircraft carriers, tanks.
Yep.
You know what's probably not going to be that effective in the next big war? Aircraft carriers and tanks. We already have too many Abrams. We don't know what to do with them. We keep saying, people in Congress, generals keep saying, stop, we don't need any more tanks. And they're still going because we got to keep that military-industrial complex money flowing. And so it's likely going to be something like drones or whatever else that's going to win the next war. Also is not going to probably win the next war. Really expensive single aircraft fighters or fighter bombers. Yeah. Probably going to be drones. And so what is the U.S. military spending a huge amount of money on? Building a total of, I think, 12 or 13 aircraft carriers that cost almost $1 billion each, that house 5,000 or 3,000 people with really, really expensive planes. Effectively the U.S.'s strategy right now is, we have we're building up to 12 aircraft carriers and these carrier task groups, and if those go away, we really don't have any real ability to do stuff. And meanwhile, China's multi-missiles and drones, and so is Russia doing a very similar thing. Meanwhile, what's China doing for the most part? Yeah, they're building little almost mini aircraft carriers, but what are they doing? they're just economically taking over everything, because that also is sort of probably the best military, non-military action you can do. So meanwhile, America is blowing up people that make $25 a month in Afghanistan for a lost war that they never won in the first place, just like Vietnam, so that they can spend money in a process for an empire to do its thing, as China is now the biggest trade partner with, what is it, like 65% of the planet?
Yeah.
It's like, why would China even try to compete with our military? They just have to. China's really hard to invade for sort of similar reasons that the U.S. is hard to invade. It's desert on one side, mountains on the other. It's like, so what's the U.S. is like? We have like Japan adding a buffer here, and we got these islands. We got to keep them contained. China's just ignoring our military. Everything that we're building is going to fail. And when the empire falls, we're not going to have any real use for most of the military we have, because we couldn't afford it.
Yeah. I think as a final note for this story, at least Jimmy Dore has been consistent, speaking to the other side, speaking to as many people that will listen. These regime change wars have to end. They have to stop now. And now more than ever, we have to fight for that better future, because what we're going down this pathway that we're on simply doesn't work.